Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We have an absolute cracker of a matchup to get into, and we're going to do a real deep dive into this one. It is Jannik Sinner versus Daniil Medvedev in a rematch of the Australian Open 2024 final, where of course Jannik Sinner came back from 2 sets of love down to win in 5 to win his first Grand Slam. The head-to-head is 6-4 in favor of Medvedev, but Sinner has won the last 4 meetings between the two. So a really intriguing one to get straight into the detail of. And before we do, though, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you are new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. So I want to break this down in detail. We're gonna do the similar format to what we normally do, which is very briefly go through their matches played so far, so how they've made the semi-finals and their route. Then we'll talk about the head-to-head, and then I'm going to break down their last meeting, which was at the Australian Open, in real detail, because I think it's worth breaking it down in detail. And then also talking about how the match might play out tactically, again, going into it from not necessarily a granular level, but again, pretty much drilling into it. And I don't want to leave any stone unturned because I think this is a really interesting match. And for me, anyway, I was watching the matches back as well, so I've been watching their matches and watched their final again of the Australian Open. I watched it back and I just thought there's a lot to discuss into how this match could play out. So let's talk about Medvedev's route to the semi-finals. He has been playing really well. Hasn't dropped a single set. Beat Fucsovic, Nori, Kepfer, and Jarry. You could say a slightly easier route, but I don't think so, in all honesty. Sinner, he's been playing really well, of course, as well. Beat Vavasori, Greek Sport, O'Connell, and Matchak. Dropped the first set against Greek Sport in that match. That was a little bit of a surprise, but what I would say is I think the Sunshine Double, he's been playing some really good tennis, Sinner. I don't think he's been playing his best. I have to say that. But he's been playing well. Medvedev, I think, looks really at home on these Miami Open courts that are, in terms of pace, in between, I would say, Indian Wells and the Australian Open. So they're pretty quick, but they're not. I wouldn't class them as a fast hard court, but I also wouldn't class them as a slow hard court. They're about medium, just right, as the Three Bears would say. Anyway, in terms of the head-to-head between the two, well, you can see here the last time they played was at the Australian Open. Sinner won in 5 sets. And the head-to-head is 6-4 in favor of Medvedev. But the last 4 matches they played, Sinner's won. ATP Finals was before the Australian Open, then Vienna back in the last year, and also Beijing. Generally, their matches are quite tight and have been the last 6 or 7, 8 versions of this matchup. But Sinner has got the momentum going into this match. There's no doubt about that. So is this version of Jannik all wrong for Medvedev, or will Medvedev problem solve and get the win? I think is really the question, right? Because Medvedev mentally, will he be a little bit scarred from the Australian Open and the fact that Sinner's won the last 4, or will he just take it as an opportunity, as a challenge to really grab hold of some of that momentum in this head-to-head? So I want to talk about their matchups, their matches, sorry, even in the past, and then also break it down more tactically how I think the match is going to play out. So, in the initial 6 match winning streak, Medvedev was able to break down Sinner with superior shot tolerance, especially backhand to backhand. Even though Sinner's backhand is arguably, well, I would say, is top 5 two-handed backhands on tour. I think for the most part it has been in this rivalry. In terms of shot tolerance, right, and not breaking down, Medvedev, in terms of a level of shot tolerance on the backhand side, was up here, and Sinner was down here. That gap has closed quite a bit. But in those initial 6 matches, he would frustrate Sinner, and eventually he'd see the unforced error count on that side of the net increase. Even on the forehand side as well as Sinner, I think Sinner likes to play aggressively, of course, likes to try and shorten the points when he can, and he didn't have maybe the maturity to stick in the rallies with Medvedev and be patient in a lot of ways. And we saw him coming to the net, starting to come to the net towards the back end of those losses, but maybe not picking his moments at the right time as well. Medvedev picked him off. Medvedev, in terms of IQ, is up there with some of the best, I think, on tour. And that's something that Sinner's been improving, no doubt. In recent times, and the matches that Sinner's been winning, of course, against Medvedev and against everyone else, his shot tolerance has improved Sinner quite drastically, I would say, as well. If you go back and watch the Australian Open final, you'll see some of the longer rallies in the last 3 sets. Sinner ends up winning a lot of those longer rallies, which you might not necessarily expect with someone with his style. He's also improved his clutchness, which I don't always like saying because it's not really a particularly technical term, but I'm saying it because I think it feeds more into the mental side of the game. Sinner has been talking about relishing the big crunch points and has won the majority of those types of points in 2024 when it's really mattered, when it's a point that could decide the outcome of a match or points that have decided outcomes of matches. He's tended to win those. That's just been the case, and that's why he's only lost 1 match this year so far. So does he have the mental edge going into it? Maybe, given his form, given he's won the last 4 matches, given the fact that he came back in the Australian Open final. The comeback was incredible in his first ever Grand Slam final as well. And how much scar tissue does Medvedev have, if any, from the losses? Well, Medvedev also did beat Sinner in last year's Miami final, so I think we have to take that into account as well. But that version of Sinner isn't the one we're seeing now, in fairness. So how might the match play out tactically? Well, there's a few things I want to discuss. And first of all, I'll talk about the Australian Open final. I'm not going to talk about it for a huge amount of time, but I'm going to be pretty detailed talking about it from an analysis point of view. So in the Australian Open final, the first 2 sets were simply put sublime from Medvedev. But surprisingly, it wasn't the vintage Medvedev who we're used to, who would normally grind down opponents and play on the back foot for the most part and be happy to induce errors from the opponent rather than always being on the front foot. And he doesn't tend to take massive risks, Medvedev. That's generally what his game is. He is a percentage player, you would say. However, he was unusually but extremely effectively aggressive from the baseline. A lot of superlatives there. He was coming to the net a lot with success generally. I think I coined it Netvedev, and I loved it. To the first 2 sets, and even, of course, in the 3rd and 4th and 5th sets, he had some success, not to the same degree, but unorthodox as his net game is, he was having a lot of success, and it was fantastic to see, and it was so effective. We saw an attacking brand of tennis that Medvedev adopted and executed to a T. And it was, I think it not only took Sinner back, but I think it took everyone else back as well. I just did not see it coming. And Sinner had to defend in large parts and was made to feel uncomfortable on the back foot in a position where he couldn't really dictate often. And a lot of that was also down to depth by Medvedev. So he was being aggressive and going line early in a lot of the exchanges, taking bigger risks. He was coming to the net often, so closing the court. Sinner felt like, felt uncomfortable having to, kind of be pushed back as Medvedev was approaching that a lot, transitioning a lot. And Sinner wasn't passing him very well with passing shots or lobs or etc. or angles. And the other thing was depth from Medvedev. Now, he was hitting the ball not only pinpoint in terms of his accuracy, but also in terms of his depth. And if you watch the match back, you'll see Medvedev's depth in the first couple of sets is unreal. Sinner is having to soak up some elite ground strokes by Medvedev. And it's arguably, I would say, those first 2 sets is one of the best versions of Medvedev I think I've ever seen. And I think that's, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that, in honesty. So the question is, will Medvedev, I think, look to replicate that game plan in this semi-final? Because if he plays as he did in those first 2 sets in Australia, he gives himself, in my opinion, the best possible chance of winning. Especially given this match is best of 3 as well. A lot of implementing this game plan, though, will come down to his serve. And I didn't mention that a little while ago. But that also was crucial. And I think it is the most important shot in tennis, in my opinion, and I think a lot of coaches will agree with me. He needs to make a lot of first serves, and he has to hit his spot so he can be aggressive behind it. When Medvedev goes into these moments of hitting a lot of first serves or aces on returnables, and then he gets through service games really quickly, it does put a lot of pressure on the opponent because they might have had to have held their serve for 3, 4 minutes. He then comes on, and if he holds to love or even 15 and he wraps up the game in just under or over a minute, it puts a lot of pressure on the opponent to then say, oh, hold on, now I need to serve again. Wasn't I just serving a few minutes back? And they would be right in thinking that. So that's something that Medvedev is more than capable of doing. Whether he's as aggressive as he was, sorry, even in that Australian Open final for the first 2 sets, I don't know, because not only did he have the game plan, but it was a slightly riskier game plan. It's not really his style, but the execution was fantastic, and he obviously was running really hot in those first 2 sets. Can he do the same thing to the same effectiveness in Miami? I'm not so sure, in all honesty, because the Miami courts, as I said, are not quite as quick. Also, it's extremely humid, so him coming to the net a lot against Sinner may not be as fit as Medvedev is. It just may not be as viable. But I think it's the best possible tactic, in all honesty. And Sinner may expect it, and he may be able to counteract it. But I just think if Medvedev gets dragged into being the wall that we know he can be, I don't think it's enough against this version of Sinner nowadays. That's just how I see it anyway. For Jannik, he needs to be really patient in the rallies, because even if Medvedev is aggressive, he's probably not going to make a lot of errors. Against Jarry in the last match, he hit 12 winners and 5 unforced errors, which is a really good return. So he needs to be patient in the rallies, and he has been versus Medvedev. To be fair to him, the last 4 times they played, he has to pick the right opportunities to attack line and utilize the drop shot. And his transition game to the net needs to happen in the right moments. As we know, Medvedev is open to the drop shot and being attacked with net play due to his deep returning and his general deep positioning, especially against someone as aggressive off the ground as Sinner. And that'll be important, I think, for Jannik. And this is clearly someone that he's played a lot. He has a lot of experience against them, which is a positive. He needs to be dialed in. I think his serve is going to be key as well, right? I mean, he needs to be returning well. The serve turn dynamic, I think it goes without saying, it's important to win that battle, because if you don't win that battle, it's very hard to win a match. And you need to at least be, splitting maybe the momentum in that to give yourself a chance. And I think Sinner's returning against Medvedev generally was very good and has been very good in the last few times they played. I think the fact that he's been trying to attack the second serve is really good as well. And on his serve, he's improved the accuracy. He's improved, I would say, the guile, the pace, the variation as well. And that's been a really good, I think it's been a really good thing for him, of course. And changing his stance from platform to pinpoint seems to have worked as well. And he's worked at some other technical aspects of it. So, in terms of prediction, and I hope you guys enjoy the analysis, by the way, because I thought I'd go into a bit more in depth this time. In terms of a prediction, I am going to go with Sinner to continue to bridge the gap in the head-to-head. I just think at the moment, this version of Sinner is just so difficult for anyone really to beat. And we saw Alcaraz do it at Indian Wells, and Alcaraz was extremely hot. If Medvedev wants to win, as I said, I think if he plays how he did in those first 2 sets of the Australian Open, he's got a very good chance of winning, because I think he beats most players on tour. Or maybe not, but because styles do make a difference as well. But I think in Sinner anyway, any version of Sinner, he ends up giving himself a pretty good chance of winning. I just think Sinner, though, will come out on top in this one. And I think his general base level has been really high. So I'm going to go with Sinner. I'll go for 3 sets. I think Medvedev will take one. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's going to be very, very close. Let me know in the comment section below who you're picking and why. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. Also, massive, massive shout out to all of you for 10,000 subscribers, for 10K. It's incredible. I never imagined we would get to this stage of the channel when I first started it just over 3 years ago in my bedroom with my little camera. Well, not even a camera, just my phone. So I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you don't mind, do hit the like button because it really does help us out. It helps the algorithm, just pushes people towards the video and also the channel. And same with subscribing as well. And a big shout out to our members and also our team at QualityShot Tennis because, you know, 10,000 subscribers hasn't just come from me. I've also managed to procure some great people to join our journey, and they've also had a big, big impact on getting us as far as we've got. Road to 20K is definitely activated. We'll see you guys very, very soon.